Good morning, everyone. My name is Zhang, and welcome to today's CTE Career Panel presented by Apache News. Thank you all for being here. We're excited to hear from professionals across different industries and learn more about their experiences, challenges, and advice for students considering similar paths. To start, each panelist will introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Ashley Stagan. I'm a senior character artist for video games and film. I started actually in high school, very much like you guys, and I went to a very specific trade school called Noman, which you guys will see later at the event, which will be super fun, so drop by and say hi. From there, it's a trade school that I did a fast track of 3 years that's specifically in texturing, modeling, making assets for film and games. And then from there, I got an internship into my first gig into the industry, and I've been there for about 10 years now.
Hi everyone, my name is Nadine Sachko Su. I'm CEO of Sachko LLC. I'm what you call a multi-passionate entrepreneur. I own 3 businesses. I own an accounting firm, a portrait studio in photography, and I'm also a children's book author. I came to AHS for my freshman and sophomore years in '93 and '94, and I love being a multi-passionate entrepreneur, and I'm excited to talk about that today. Thanks, guys.
Hello, I'm Linda Strawberry. I'm a show director, tour director, and a visual artist. And I have my own company called Prisma, but I also work with a lot of major industry content companies like Nimblist and Silent Partners. And I switch between film direction and tour show direction. And I'm an Arcadia parent. My son goes here. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Joshua Shen. I'm a Foreign Service Officer with the U.S. Department of State. Colloquially, it's a diplomat for the United States. I represent the United States overseas, and we also sometimes work back in D.C. working on building bridges with other countries and peoples. And I want to give a shout out to my daughter, Melody, in 9th grade.
Thank you for such interesting introductions. We will now move on into our discussion. First, can you tell us about your career journey? How did you get started, and what led you to where you are today?
Bit in my intro, but I found a Noman, at the time it was called Noman Workshop, and they just had like DVDs of different artists, and I really admired them. So I went on and I was like, oh my gosh, I need these DVDs of creature design and all these cool artists. And then I discovered that it was a school, so it's called Noman School of Visual Effects. You can take individual courses there, so I started doing that in high school when I was a junior, I believe, and I just focused really heavily. I took multiple art classes for like extracurricular stuff in high school. And then eventually I worked towards getting and working on a portfolio. I met with their admissions people. So I have a pretty like straightforward, career path as far as that. And so I got accepted into Noman out of high school, which at the time was very, very rare. But now obviously I'm here talking to high schoolers, so it's more common now, which is really great because we're accredited and we're like a 4-year school. And so, yeah, I think going into this career path is an interesting one just because Noman was so specific in trade. It is a trade school, so you don't take your typical courses. It's all art focused. So you'll do figure drawing, you'll do a lot of 3D modeling and programming like in ZBrush and sculpting, So my career is a bunch of sculpting monsters and characters and creatures and stuff for films and games. So yeah, I think the biggest thing was Noman and finding that direction in the beginning.
Journey was a little bit different. After I was in college, I went to Cal Poly Pomona. I was studying accounting. And I thought that was going to be my career, but then I fell in love with cars. And I started racing my Nissan 240SX, and during college, I became one of the first females to compete professionally in the American drifting series called Formula Drift. And so from then on, I realized that my future career might be a little different than other people. I continued in accounting to fund my love for drifting. And along the way in drifting, I was photographed a lot. I met a lot of really bad photographers, and I was inspired to become a better photographer and make people feel more comfortable in front of the camera. So once I retired from professional drifting, I became a professional portrait photographer with the quest to make people feel really comfortable in front of the camera. And also, I eventually had 4 daughters of my own, and I went to the bookstore, and there were no books about Asian American girls racing cars. And so I started the book series Sachiko Goes Racing in 2021. And so now I also am a children's book author. And I want to fill that gap and show our children that women can race cars and follow their dreams too. So that's been my journey, and I now balance 3 different businesses: my accounting firm, my portrait studio, and writing books. So yeah.
That was very cool. Okay, I've had a circuitous route to where I'm at right now. I actually started out as an engineer, an audio engineer in the studio, and I worked on a bunch of records. I worked for Capitol Records, and then I got my own record deal. And I toured the world. I fell in love with touring. And then I had some kids. And then I decided I need to figure out what I wanted to do next about 2015. And I started making art films. And then that turned in me becoming the creative director for Smashing Pumpkins. And then I started getting into tours and started designing tours. And then that kind of blew up, and then now I kind of flip around. I just finished my first horror feature film, and I'm directing the new Bon Jovi tour for the summer. But I've also worked with a lot of artists across the whole spectrum, doing things like directing segments for The Tonight Show, Good Morning America, and doing crazy art films, really wild music videos. And designing 31-foot tall inflatables for stage. So I never know what I'm going to do next, but it's been really fun. And it was really strange getting there. So yeah.
Oh, I'm very impressed by the panel. Much more creative and exciting sometimes than what I feel like I do. So I grew up here as an immigrant kid, and I had always had an interest in international affairs. I started reading newspapers, doing my paper route when I was 13, and just always read the international affairs section. And also trying to, as an immigrant, balance the identities that I was growing up with, being an American, but also having ties to a foreign country. But I grew up in California. I had no idea there were careers in international affairs, and I had no family or friends network that led me to understand that, you could do this as a full-time job, and you can represent the United States even as an immigrant. So in my mid-20s, I was teaching over in China, and I met a couple of Americans who said, you could take this test called the Foreign Service Test. Didn't know what it was, but I tried it out and didn't pass it the first time. Every year, about some 20,000 people take the test, and by the end, it gets down to about 700 people pass. And so I went to grad school at Georgetown. I wanted to be in DC because I knew that's where kind of all the policy was made, so I got my exposure there. Went to grad school, passed the test the second time, and so I've been working as a Foreign Service officer since 2008.
Thank you for sharing your experiences. What education or training did you need to get where you are? Did you take a traditional path, or was there an alternative route into your field?
Yeah, so I took a more traditional path as taking, going to an art college. There's plenty of different art colleges you can go to. I think for my career specifically, for getting into visual effects for a film and game, it's kind of hard to compete with Noman because we're so specified in that. But Art Center has a lot of amazing stuff. I also applied to Otis at the time when I was looking into it. But a lot of people, this is far back before, you know, college was, I guess, super popular for doing art, really. The starving artist thing was very much, you know, more popular. Every person I talk to in my industry, everyone's different, you know. Some people just drew and drew and drew and drew, and then they had a portfolio that somebody liked. You know, Simon Lee's an amazing traditional sculptor in our industry. He's worked on like Pacific Rim and all sorts of really cool stuff. He just sculpted a bunch of clay monsters for about a month, you know, and then Guillermo del Toro hit him up and was like, hey, come work on film. So it really varies a lot of what kind of education you need. I think a lot of it is self-inspired and self-motivated, because as an artist you need to be able to just be very driven to explore different mediums. You know, I came from a traditional 2D background, and I still do a lot of traditional character design and concept work, but I also do a lot of 3D, so that's, you know, getting into free programs like Blender, or, you know, sculpting in a program like ZBrush or Maya, or a bunch of these 3D modeling and texturing programs. And just kind of starting to get your hands dirty. There's also more than just you know, me as a character artist, that's what I do, but there's also animation and rigging. There's very technical sides to film and game making, which is really cool. So there's so many different fields. So I think a lot of it too, getting started, is just exploring a lot of the making of films or video games and seeing what kind of calls to you as a person. And I think that's a good way to start, and that's kind of how I started.
For me, my path was definitely traditional when I was pursuing accounting. So I did go to school, Cal Poly Pomona, for accounting, and I continued that path during my racing days. But as I was racing, I was building my accounting career. I started in private accounting. I worked for a CPA, went public accounting for a couple years, went back to private, and eventually started doing finance at Caltech. And so that's kind of when I hit the pinnacle of my accounting career. And after that, I started my own accounting firm, because a lot of people that I met along the way were entrepreneurs. And so I started taking clients on the side and built my accounting firm. And now we have 3 full-time employees now. And you know, during the racing times, I was led by passion. And I don't just start businesses, I start businesses that fix problems that frustrate me. And so when I was racing, the photography was really important to me, and just finding, forming meaningful relationships with photographers. So that really blossomed into my passion for portrait photography. And I started the portrait photography business, Sachiko Studio, and I'm the only luxury portrait studio here in Arcadia. And we've been here for 15 years now. And I really love photographing people, because everyone is not a model, they're just normal people. And I want to make photo sessions fun and comfortable for them, and tailor everything to what they like. And so that's how that came about. And then later, you know, when I go shopping for books and I don't see the books that depict characters that I feel are more like the women of today, then I want to solve that problem. And that's what I did. I started Sachiko Goes Racing. And so, you know, I am an entrepreneur, but I start the businesses to solve the problems. And I think that that's really important and meaningful, and definitely driven by passion, which isn't always a traditional route that we all take, but I definitely encourage that. And that's kind of embodies what I believe today. So thanks.
Well, I had a very, very untraditional route. I wanted so badly to go to college, but I just didn't have the math scores. And I was really driven, very creative, but didn't really know where I fit. And so how I started was actually, my dad is a composer, so I used to help him beta test Pro Tools in the very early days of digital editing and audio. So I'm a little shaky because I'm not in front of the camera. I'm behind the camera. So this is like, so I knew how to use Pro Tools, and because I had that skill, I got hired immediately in the crossover from analog to digital audio editing. So I was in the right place at the right time, but I had put in the work as a student to learn the skill set. So suddenly I found myself traveling around working with really legendary producers right out the gate, just because I had a skill. Skills, whether you're self-taught or whether you go to college, never stop learning skills, never stop improving your skills, and always continue to learn something new. Like, I'm always learning something new. Like right now, we use a very wide range of software. I use Cinema 4D, After Effects, Premiere. I obviously could do audio. That's how I started out. But I think Photoshop, all these different things you use, Touch Designer, Notch. You can't know too many things when it comes to skills or software. And it's all about your work ethic and self-drive then. And whether you go through an art school or you do this hands-on stuff like this team is doing a really great job. This is so valuable because this does cross over into the real world. And someone like me is always looking for young talent that's self-motivated, driven, is always learning, is just really hungry for it. And to me, it doesn't matter whether you have a degree, whether you graduated from Yale, whether you're self-taught. I'm only looking at portfolio and only looking at skill set. So I think whether you're going through college or whether you're going a different route, if you need to go a different route, I think it's really you against yourself. And so that's kind of how I think about it. I'm always reaching for something bigger than what I've done.
Pro Tools was super hard. I tried to use it a long time ago in my rock band days. My journey to becoming a diplomat was definitely very circuitous. I grew up, like I said, here as an immigrant. I went to college. I went to East LA College. I went to then to four-year college to study journalism. And then the journalism industry was collapsing already at that time. So it wasn't the right thing. So my first job out of college was at I would say I'm the only person who worked at a sweatshop, a shoe factory in southern China. And I was the accounts manager. I dealt with Walmart and Payless shoes. But I saw the labor conditions, and I started to understand that trade policy affected people's lives, not just in China, of course, but also workers and consumers in the United States. So it got me thinking about how I can have a job that can influence our foreign policy. But still, I didn't know about this career. Eventually, I mentioned I heard about this process. You pass the Foreign Service test. And actually, to be a Foreign Service officer, all you need is a high school degree. So you don't even need to graduate from college. But it does help to go to understand what people are saying, the international news, but also U.S. history and our Constitution. So learned a lot about that. Learned a lot about, in graduate school, I learned a lot about speaking skills, communication skills, so those soft skills that are critical to our industry. When I was first, as a California kid, moving to DC, being told I need to have an elevator pitch, I need to be able to explain something really important or talk about myself within 30 seconds if I have a chance to meet somebody, I was overwhelmed. And so it takes a little bit of time, but practice talking to people, looking at them in their face, and you get there, you get better.
Thank you for describing the routes you all took. Next, could you describe a typical day in your job and what it looks like and some of the main tasks and responsibilities you deal with?
Yeah. So, my job is interesting. I mean, I can start with something more interesting. When I first started, I was actually in practical effects and film. So practical effects I was on a computer digitally sculpting things, but we would rapid prototype it and then mold it and cast it, and that would turn into something. So as an example, the studio that I was with is called Legacy Effects, and they worked on like Mandalorian, and then we would we built Baby Grogu or Baby Yoda. I made the Mandalorian armor. So with stuff like that, it's a huge collaboration, because you have to like scan the stuntmen and the actors, and you have to put them in the computer, and then we have to make sure like helmets fit. I mean, Boba Fett helmets, unfortunately, your nose is always going to be pushed up against the glass, but making sure they're like as comfortable as possible. And it's a real challenge to bring something that is originally like a concept, that's just like a 2D drawing, or sometimes a 3D sculpt of something, but it's still conceptual. It doesn't fit an actual person, So the constraints of practical effects of making sure that the robotics can fit in, Baby Yoda's face without changing his proportions too much, and making sure his eyes can blink and his ears can move and all these different things. It's a huge collaboration on everybody's part to make sure that that vision gets seen all the way through. And then, at the end of the day, when you bring it on set, the puppeteers and the people who put the costumes on and stuff, and everybody who goes and shoots and films. So I think a lot of it's more collaborative than people think. And it's a lot of problem solving, kind of more on the spot. Like you don't, in college I learned how to do art and design and sculpting and all these technical things, but there's also every single project's going to be different, So you have to be very varied in the way you can solve those different art problems, whether it's being able to fit a helmet on a character or being able to make a creature or a monster. And games is very similar. Right now I work at Squanch Games. We're releasing High on Life 2 on Friday, so go check it out. Go play our game. Super excited. But games also, they run in real time. So there's a lot of performance issues that come with that. So there's a lot of other problem solving sides that's more technical. You can't have 1,000 polygons on screen. You can't have 1,000, super high resolution textures and stuff because everybody wants their, 60 frames per second and, all that jazz. So much of the industry and so much of my responsibilities for the day is making sure that that end goal and vision is whatever it needs to be. And that process to get there is so much problem solving that, isn't very typical. So I think that's like a really important part of like my daily task is making sure that the people before me and the people after me, we have a nice efficient pipeline and I'm friendly to that pipeline, So yeah.
Yeah, my day-to-day is crazy because a lot of people say, how do you do it all? You have 3 businesses. How can you handle all that? It's crazy. It's always a balancing act. And insult to injury, I only want to work 4 days a week. Being an entrepreneur, you can make your own schedule, but you still got to get the things done. So I believe in the 4-day work week. Monday through Thursday are my working days. So I am very big on productivity, product management, delegation of time. Those are all things that I've learned as an entrepreneur over the years. And so I lean on my team a lot. We do meetings every Monday and we kind of talk about the week for all the different brands we have. On the accounting side, I'm not as involved anymore. Luckily, the team really runs the accounting firm and I sign off on financial statements at the end of the year. So pretty much during the year, I'm more in a higher level review. And our accounting firm is full. We don't accept any new clients because we are just completely booked. We are a bookkeeping firm. We don't do tax, we do bookkeeping. And that's just this unknown facet that's not very popular in the accounting industry, but it's very in demand because every single business needs a bookkeeper. And so we are slammed with work and I let my team handle it. For the photo studio, we're a luxury portrait studio. So I do a lot of meetings and calls with my clients. We plan shoots for 2 months. We do hair, makeup, wardrobe, styling, custom sets. So people will come to me and pay me $5,000 for a shoot and we plan and execute everything for them completely custom. And so that's very different than your normal photographer that like you just go meet at Arcadia County Park. And I pride myself on that. So we do a lot of custom experiences and it takes a lot of planning. And so I have a team of hair and makeup artists that I manage. I have 3 of them. And I have 2 shoot consultants who really just manage the photo shoots, make sure we have the timeline done and buying for sets and production of the sets. And then for photo shoots, it's really fun. I love shoot day. My shoot experiences are 3 hours. And so you'll find me either in the morning or the early afternoon doing shoots. I try only to do 2 shoots a week max, just because there's just so much that goes into photo shoots. I also manage my book series. Right now I'm a self-published author. And what that means is that I'm responsible for getting all the illustrators to finish the book, get the book printed overseas, get it into stores, and then collaborate with other organizations. So I'm really happy to say that the Peterson Automotive Museum and the Japanese American National Museum have partnered with me, and I do a lot of appearances for those museums, and that really does help get my stories out to a bigger audience. If you've been to Santa Anita Mall at Kinokuniya, you've probably seen my books. They're in the children's book section on the top shelf. We got premium placement there. But just kind of forging relationships with distributors and making sure that I'm always cognizant of the next book that's going to come out, because it's a series. I want to do 10 books. I'm about to release book 3, and I'm already writing book 4, 5, and 6. So it's just kind of trying to balance that on a 4-day work week is very difficult. But if you really try hard, I use AI every day, I delegate every day, and we have a great team. I become a master of time efficiency. So yep, that's a little bit about what I do every day.
Okay, this will be a little bit hard for me to explain. So I guess I'll walk you through today, well, besides this. Right now, I am the show director for the Bon Jovi tour for the summer, and I'm working with a company called Nimblist. And so my collaborator on that is a show designer named Spike Brandt, and he's designing stage. He does the lighting, stage overall direction, and then I'm in charge of all the screen content. And so I have a team of about 21 artists at the moment, and some of them are independent, some of them are at studios, and so we have 47 songs of content in play right now. We have about 16 weeks. Today we're kind of brainstorming how to open the show, so it's really fun. It's really fun to get into that because we're building the whole show open in Cinema 4D and After Effects, and then the band that will, like, live cameras will pipe into stuff that we create in 3D, and then the band will appear within that somehow. So I woke up really early because I knew I was going to do this. So I was working with a team on the East Coast, just brainstorming that, and then I'm planning some film shoots for content in Arizona and Las Vegas, and casting dancers and stuff like that. And then I have to put together the main show deck, which is about 157 pages right now, but it's filled with all of our daydreams, our storyboards, aesthetic, progress, and then that's going to go to the artist this week. So that's a little bit different. I have a studio downtown LA, and I'm building some sets for some of the stuff we're shooting on our own. So I don't know. I also wanted to mention this. I'm always looking for interns, people that want to get some hands-on experience, because there's so much to do. I always need help. So it's right now we have set design interns and also After Effects and editing interns. So I was also working with those teams this morning, giving them their daily routine. So I'll check in with them after this. Yeah.
I'll kind of describe two kinds of days working out at an embassy. So let's say a more normal day is you show up, you review the local news. Usually you have a team that translate things for you. Now we have AI, we can help do that as well. This is content in foreign languages under TV and print media. We'll have a country team. A country team is the term for when the ambassador calls the heads of each section. We have political, econ, public diplomacy, which is like people-to-people outreach, management, military, commerce, and so forth. And so we'll give an update on things we're working on this week, things that we need collaboration with other sections. After that, we typically, we'll be responding to multiple different tasks. We'll respond to Washington, our headquarters, about an opportunity, or they're saying you need to tell us this information, so we need to respond to them. We'll be planning for local meetings for the week. Sometimes if the ambassador or anyone more senior than that comes along, we need to prepare everything in writing. It's like what you should say, what's the background of the people you're meeting, and things like that, have that all approved. I would also draft social media content for the embassy. And sometimes we'll get an opportunity to prepare grants and funding requests or opportunities. So on a fun day, one time the best experience in my time as a Foreign Service, I answer one of those Washington opportunities saying, hey, if you want to send someone to your country to do something interesting, write a proposal for it. So we had written a proposal to do a skateboard envoy. And at that time I was in Sri Lanka, which is an island off of India. And we also got to manage the Maldives. So for work, I get to go to the Maldives. So I sent a skateboarding, I grew up skateboarding, so I had a personal passion for it. But I noticed the Maldivians, it was one of two countries that claimed to be 100% Muslim. And there was concerns at that time with extremist groups. And so we thought skateboarding, there was a nascent scene, would be a good way to connect with them. So we brought a skateboarding envoy, not just to the Maldives, but this remote island in the Maldives, where, we got to, that day, we taught kids how to skateboard. We led classes on starting an organization for skateboarding that pairs education. And then in the evening, the locals took me deep sea diving without any snorkels. And I was scared out of my mind in the deep sea. They caught some fish, we had a barbecue, and we stayed in the island that night. So that was a great day.
Thank you for sharing with us the intricacies of your day-to-day. What is the biggest challenge you've had to face in your career? How did you overcome it, and what did you learn from that experience?
Yeah, there's so many challenges every day because it's ever-changing for video games, and every project is different. But I think the biggest thing overall for career-wise is just staying relevant and staying competitive. It's a small industry. Everybody knows everybody. And so it's all friendly competition, but at the same time, at the end of the day, it is competition, you know. Later when you guys go to the event, you'll see the Gnomon booth, and all the artwork that will be on the pamphlets and all that stuff, it's all student work. And you'll look at the student work, and you'll be like, oh God, oh no. Like, you know, I'm 10 years graduated, and I look at their work, and I'm just like, man, they're learning stuff that like I didn't learn while I was there, because technology's ever growing and changing and stuff. And so I think the biggest thing is, you know, the hardest challenge is being able to work full time on, you know, being creative all the time for 8 hours a day, but then also, or more, but then also at the end of the day, continuing to do art at the end of the day, sitting down at that maybe same computer. If I work from home, so it's the same computer. And then pushing your own personal work and pushing your own art. I think that challenge is really surprising to most people, because, you know, you think that just because it's a creative, you get to be creative all day, that it's so easy to continue to be creative. But that creative energy is really difficult to keep going. It's, you know, you got to keep oiling it like a well-machined like engine. But I couldn't think of the stupid saying there, but it's fine. She's the car lady, not me. But yeah, so I think that's always really surprising, is because like I love to draw, but at the end of the day, can I continue drawing after an 8-hour day? Of also doing like sculpting and modeling and a bunch of other things. So I think that's honestly a big challenge, and that's where I think trying to stay competitive and also trying to spark your own inspiration, even after 10 years of doing this as a professional, I think that's a really big one. So yeah, just I think my advice on continuing that would be really trying to always do what you find is fun and enjoyable at the end of the day. And maybe keeping a part of that art or a part of that creativity more to yourself than giving it to, you know, your day in and day out job. You know, I do a lot of 3D art for my career, so a lot of my 2D art and my 2D illustration and drawing is more personal for me. You know, I make like my friends' D&D characters, and I design my own characters or make my own, you know, little comic book panels, or, you know, whatever it is that's fun for me to keep it interesting. So yeah.
Yeah, for me, the Altadena fires really were a wake-up call for my business. With the Altadena fires, overnight, it tanked my portrait studio because a lot of my clients were from the Altadena, Pasadena area, and really the vibe in the air at that time was none of the kind where you want to go take photos with your family, right? So either a lot of my clients lost their homes or knew people that lost their homes or had families that lost their homes. So overnight I lost all my business, right? So what is one to do? If you only if your income source is only the portrait studio, then that would essentially close your studio down if you don't have enough money in the bank to keep paying your rent, right? But lucky for me, I'm a multi-passionate entrepreneur. I have backups, right? And so accounting, more specifically our bookkeeping business, saved us because it's the business that is the most stable and most safe. And so when we have a volatile thing happen like the fires, it could help sustain for a while. And so what I decided to do was to close the portrait studio for the rest of the year until holiday portrait season in hopes that maybe business will come back then, but I'm gonna completely close temporarily and think about rebranding, think about how I can improve the studio for when we reopen, and more importantly, I own 2 suites in my business area. So we have like a studio and an office next to each other. And one's bigger and one's smaller. So I swapped the 2 and then put the portrait studio in the smaller suite so we pay less rent, put the accounting and the books in the bigger suite since they earned it because they were making money and my photo studio wasn't. And we took that time to do a remodel at the photo studio and really do some deep dive into thinking how we can reopen successfully. And it was actually a really nice break for me mentally. And then in August, I came back to a sold out holiday season. I sold out all my holiday portrait shoots in a matter of 2 weeks. And so for the rest of the year, we were sold out and it was so amazing. And I'm so happy it turned out that way. But that was the hugest problem I've ever had to deal with where my income just disappeared overnight for one of my businesses, and that's just a big risk that you have to take when you're an entrepreneur. Is something could happen and you need reserves or you need other businesses and other industries to sustain you. But yeah, that's what I learned from that. Is it's good to diversify what you do, and so I'm lucky I had my hands in another industry, so I can still keep that while the other one is kind of suffering. So. Yeah, thanks.
I relate to both of these answers. For me, it's that my job is very intense. So I probably only have 1 or 2 tours in me a year because it just takes everything from me. And I have a hard time finding space for my personal projects or things that I want to focus on personally. So like right now, like I said, I have a horror movie in post-production. And everything that's left is stuff I have to do. So it's waiting there. I can't even think about it or look at it. But every time I go to my studio, I see my props and fake blood and all that stuff. And I remember, oh yeah, that exists. But I cannot find time to finish it. And my son who goes here, he's a musician. He's also going to help me with the score. And I'm looking forward to this. But I can't find the time. So I think that's the biggest challenge, is just feeling like something really intense owns my whole schedule and I have to really just buckle down and get through these 12, 16-hour days sometimes and get to the end and then figure out how to carve space for myself as an artist. So I would say that's my biggest challenge. Also, I never know what I'm going to do next. So like I'm looking towards the fall and I don't have a idea of who I'm going to be working for, what I'll be doing. So I relate to both of these. So yeah.
I would start by saying I think it's such a great honor for any one of us to get a chance to represent the United States to foreign governments, foreign publics. I take that honor with a sense of responsibility. And that responsibility means sometimes you'll face difficult pushback because U.S. foreign policy is not always popular, as many people know. But one thing I would say, just to highlight the wonderful nature of this panel, is as an American diplomat, we get a lot of leeway because our brand, our soft power is strong. And our soft power is strong is because of the creatives here in California that create the video games, the storybooks, and the great musical and film entertainment that you all do just because you're a passion and the world is interested in that. And so when I go out there and I face tough questions, it doesn't come with the sense of hostility against America or American people, because of the wonderful reservoir of goodwill that you have all created. So it's an honor and it's a responsibility and a duty for me to do that well. But just tangibly, another great challenge is to think about. You all grew up in California. I grew up in California. It's a great place to grow up. When you're in the Foreign Service, you can't choose where you live. You move every 2-3 years. And that's difficult not just for me or my wife, but also for children. And my kids have to move schools every 2-3 years and make new friends, and it's always a challenge. So that challenge, I always advise young people interested in this type of career to think that through, because it does impact perhaps 20 years of your life. So.
Thank you. It's great to hear about how those challenges were able to become learning experiences. What is a common myth or misconception about your job? Is there something people assume about your career that isn't necessarily true?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because I mean, so much of I don't know about myths. I think there's a lot of misconception, but I think it comes from like a confusion of what I do for a living. I'll say that I'm a 3D artist, and people will be like, "Oh, so like a graphic designer?" And I'm like, "No, that's not at all what I like. I sculpt monsters," and they're like, I don't get what that means, and it's okay if you don't. But I think the biggest myth or misconception about the job is that it's more just unknown what it takes to make a film or what it takes to make a video game. And so I think there's a lot of assumptions just how that process is done, and I think people would be surprised how messy it is. Like I said, we have a game launching on Friday, and 4 months ago, I'm sitting there playtesting it, and it doesn't even look like a finished game at all, and we're 4 months till launch. But 4 months come around, and all of a sudden we're like, yeah, the game's coming out, it's launching, there's art everywhere, and all the characters are doing stuff, we got all the voice lines in, and so much of the pipeline is, we try to be as efficient as possible, but it's a bunch of humans making something, so there's always going to be mess that comes with it. So, yeah, I think I'm constantly surprised by the process of things. Even from studio to studio, it's going to be different. Legacy Effects is a practical effects studio, so the way they do their pipeline and production is going to be super different. Their deadlines are super different depending on what you're doing. Sometimes for commercials, you'll get 2 weeks or even a week, to do something and get it out the door. Films or games, there's a current game right now that's 9 years in the making. Why, I don't know. I don't think it needs to be that long, but that's the point. Is there's a lot of mystery even there. Like, I'd love to know what they're up to. So yeah, I think and to kind of negate or get away from those myths is watch behind the scenes, watch people like I do talks and panels all the time through Nomen or on YouTube or streaming, and I think finding professionals, in the industry that can kind of start breaking that surface, because there's just the tip of the iceberg that everybody else sees, which is basically the movie or the game, and then there's that whole production of it, and it's super fun to unravel and see what it really takes to make these things as a creative and as, you know, a whole team of people. So, yeah.
I experience two misconceptions about what I do. And one of them is that girls can't drive, right? And so that's the one that really resonates with me, because I've been racing cars for over 20 years professionally and for fun. And I beat guys and girls alike all the time, super fun. But you know, that's one of the purposes of Sachiko Goes Racing, the book series, is I want to teach our children and normalize the fact that women race cars, and that's not really a big deal. It's just commonplace these days. But I go to schools and I'll read the books, and the kids will say, this is make-believe, right? It's not real. And I go, no. This really happened. So I have to put like real photos in my books to show our children like, hey, this really happened. And it's just this weird stereotype that haunts me and drives me to produce more, because it's just something that I don't know where it came from, but I'm really trying to break those stereotypes and, you know, misconceptions down. The other one is, if you do a bunch of things, if you're a multi-passionate entrepreneur, then you're probably not good at anything because you're spreading yourself thin. And that's definitely not true. I believe that the more you do, the better you're going to get at splitting your time and your passions. And, you know, for me, I have a business coach that coaches me. I have a team that I delegate to. Obviously, I can't do everything by myself. And so knowing when to lean on other people has been really key in my career. And I really do believe that everything I do, I want to be the best in the world. And so that's kind of how I operate. It's never just, oh, it's good enough. It's, no, we have to do it right the first time, and we have to be the best at it. So I think those are the two misconceptions that I do experience regularly.
I think it's similar to her, where it's like, I don't think people quite understand what it is I do, which is, I understand it's hard to wrap your head around it. It's a lot harder than I could even explain, because there's so many moving parts. And I think the people that last in my industry have a lot of grit, and they have a lot of passion. Like when we go on site, we build the shows on site together, sometimes we don't sleep for days. And I think that's a big misconception, is that I don't think people even know how crazy it can get. But I love that about it. I'm a little bit of a pirate. I'll sleep on the floor. I don't care. And that's exciting to me. And I think also I agree with what you were saying, which is like, that whole thing, jack of all trades, master of none thing, don't try to focus on everything. I also feel like that's a lie, especially now. I feel like as a film director, I understand exactly what my electrics and grips are doing, and what everyone on my crew is doing. And it's important for me to have an understanding of that. And I've moonlighted as every single role on the crew. Also with tour, I have also moonlighted hooking in lights and doing that stuff too, because I feel like you have to kind of understand from the ground level what's happening around you in order to effectively direct the process. And I completely stay out of everyone's hair. I hire people and trust them, but if they do have a problem, I know enough to help. So I think that's also another thing that I liked that was mentioned. So that's all I have to say really for that. Yeah.
I'll be quick. I think a lot of people think diplomats, we just go to cocktail parties and fly around in first class to exotic locations. We're always on economy class, everybody. Though and 30 hours with 2 little kids on 3 change of planes is not fun. And and to be honest, when we do have these receptions, cocktail parties, it's actually work, because you're not there to have fun. You're there to make sure, oh, would you like to talk to this person? Oh, we need you to stop talking to this person. There's a lot of like making sure everyone is feeling you're a host instead of a participant. So
that's really interesting to hear. Finally, what is the biggest piece of advice you would give to high school students interested in your field?
Yes, I mean, start now, start having fun, start experimenting, start being creative, start learning from other professionals, start finding, artists that you like, whether it's 2D animation, 3D, if you like animation or modeling or texturing or rigging. If you don't know any of those terminologies, that's totally fine. Go look them up, go find stuff about them, Be curious, I think, is the biggest thing. I know I teach at the school at Noman. I teach intro to digital sculpting, and I'm very surprised by even people that, have a great portfolio will go in, and I'll mention, a name like, Simon Lee or Neville Page or, all these like very well-known creatives in my industry, and they don't know who they are, or like Ian McKay or something like that. And to me, I think that's super important, is to like know your industry, know the artists that are making the stuff that you love. Like if you love a movie, look up who the director is, look up who the editor is, look up what other stuff they've done, watch films on that. Or same thing with games, if you love a particular game, I love Airship Syndicate. They made like Battle Chasers and Ruined King and stuff. And, I know that that's Joe Madureira, right, who does all the art. So it's like, really dive into your art form. Don't just be an artist in the corner. It's so easy for artists to do that because we want to sneak away into a dark room and like just sit and draw or like work on the computer all day. But really go out and like meet other artists and learn from other people and explore like what inspires you, and dabble in all that stuff. Blender's a free 3D program. You can go learn it. You can go make a donut like everybody else has done. If you guys all know that, then great. So yeah, just go have fun and go experiment. That's what I would advise.
If you're interested in my field, I think ask yourself first if you have passion for what I do, whether it's accounting, entrepreneurship, writing books, taking photos of people. The first thing you have to have is passion. It's not about making money. It's about what you are passionate about and what you love. If you eat, sleep, drink photography, go into photography. Think about that. If you don't know, just really ask yourself and think, what are the problems that really bother me that I want to solve and make a difference in the world? And visit the booth today, and I have a lot of information on whether or not you want to go into accounting or writing or photography. I have a lot of good information to give you guys. We have a table for accounting, and we have a table for the photo studio and authoring. So come by, and I think getting the most experience and exposure to what you think you're passionate about first is key if you are really considering doing anything that I'm going to be representing today. So good luck to all of you.
I would echo, because we have a similar field, be curious. Be curious. Everything is possible. I can tell you that for a fact. Everything I've daydreamed about and wanted to do, I've done. And so for me, it's like, don't tell yourself at any point that you know enough, because you don't. Don't tell yourself that you're the best. You're not. Always want to get better. Always look for examples of someone who does something better than you and then try to become like them. If you do that, you'll continue to grow and grow and grow exponentially. And there really is no limit to where you might find yourself. So I would say if you want to get into creative fields, be very competitive, learn, never stop learning. There's never a moment where you know enough. So, yeah.
3 things. Academically, pay attention to your civics and government class. I literally checked out a high school textbook to pass the test. So like, I need to review this Constitution stuff. And then on international affairs, just start reading paying attention to maybe you have an alert or an app, but New York Times, The Economist, those are pretty standard mainstream ones to look at what's going on in the world, and try to find 1 or 2 that, and even if it's a region that you're interested in. Secondly, I would say look at careers.state.gov. We have many types of people coming in. If you have a law enforcement interest, you can be our diplomatic security agent. They get to carry guns and they secure facilities and protect people. We have financial managers, so if you have an audit accounting background, there's that. We have a medical officer, so if you're into nursing and all of that. There's multiple, and of course IT systems. So there's multiple routes to get into the Foreign Service besides just being what I am, a generalist. And then finally is take some opportunity, maybe as a vacation, tell your parents, or doing a semester in DC, Washington, DC. Because you really can't understand how that world works, not just State Department, but the US government agencies and Congress without just imbibing it. And summer intern season in DC is one of the most fun time for young people. So look into that.
Thank you to our amazing panelists, Ashley, Linda, Nadine, and Joshua, for sharing your time, experiences, and advice with us today. We truly appreciate your insights and inspiration you've provided to our students. And thank you to everyone watching. If you would like to meet with our panelists and more Career Expo participants, be sure to visit the CTE gym at lunch. This has been Caroline Zhang with APN, and we hope today's panel helped you learn more about the many paths your future can take.